Hello, good evening and welcome back to the Airborne Lawyer YouTube channel, and welcome to wet, cloudy San Diego in California. So in my last episode of the TBM 930 World Tour, I flew up from Tegucigalpa in Honduras and then up through Mexico and along Baja California to San Diego. In the time since, I've not had much opportunity to do any flying or any video editing, so what I decided to do was a live stream of my next flight on the TBM 930 World Tour, which is going to be to Los Angeles, or more specifically Santa Monica, on the TBM 930 World Tour. On a small plane like the TBM 930, we try and find some smaller airports that you wouldn't normally fly to in real life. So we're going to Santa Monica. Now down here is the baseball stadium, and there's some really detailed scenery down here in the downtown of San Diego. There's a shopping mall down here by the looks of it. I think the stadium's called something like the Pet Pack Stadium, but I'm no great follower of baseball, so I stand to be corrected on that. And then over here is the Uss Midway. So this aircraft carrier was commissioned 8 days before the end of the Second World War, and it was in active service right the way through until 1992, when it was retired here to San Diego, where it's been ever since, and it's now a museum. So if you're in San Diego, you can go and see what an aircraft carrier is like. I tell you what, I'd be quite interested in doing that. So that is San Diego, and this is our TBM 930, which we have flown all the way from Cambridge in the UK to San Diego via the east coast of the US and through the Caribbean right the way round South America, which I spent a lot of last year doing, and now finally back up into North America. And this is also, I should mention, not only my first proper live stream, but also the first time I've ever gone live with a webcam. So I hope that's not offensive to your eyes at this moment. So let's jump inside the cockpit of the TBM and dry off, since it's pouring with rain out there. And safety first, we'll close up the door. And let's start getting the plane turned on. So I've turned on the power, I've got the nav lights on, and we will start just getting the autopilot programmed in. So on today's flight, we are flying up to Santa Monica, which is not very far at all. Let's just show you what the route looks like. It's pretty straightforward. Obviously, it's only around about 100 miles, so it's not going to take us very long at all. This is it. We are just going to be flying the Coward 2 departure and fly up to the SLI VOR, Seal Beach VOR, just to the south of Los Angeles, at which point we begin our approach into Santa Monica. So it's not going to take long at all, maybe about 20 minutes in the air, I think. And we are just going to put that into the sim. So just jumping back into the cockpit here, we've got a planned altitude today of 16,000 feet, so I'm going to pop that in to the primary flight display. And we will initially do a vertical speed climb of 1,200 feet a minute. Now, what we'll just do is check out what the weather is doing as well. When I last checked it, shortly before going live, they had just changed the runways to runway 09. Let's take a look at that now. This is just Flight Radar 24. And yeah, you can see the planes are coming in over the Pacific and they're taking off over the city. So that means they're landing on runway 09. Now that's unusual. I don't actually know if I've ever really used runway 09 at San Diego, so we will presumably be giving that a try. Taking a quick look also at SimAware. So this is, I am on VATSIM. Taking a look here, you can see it's actually pretty quiet at the moment in California. This is the busy season over in Europe. Tons of flights going on in Europe right now. But down here, it's pretty quiet. Nonetheless, we do have San Diego approach on, so I will be calling them up shortly. Just a few aircraft on the ground. That is us just there in the GA area. So let's, again, jump back into the sim. We'll select 16,000. I'm going to select on the heading selector, I will select 090. Just to, where are we? There we go. Let's set 090 so that we can pick up the runway heading once we take off. And I'll select that there. Switch on the yaw damper. Switch on the flight directors so we know what it's going to. That we know that we're going to be pointing the right way. And I will select the active nav as FMS, ready to pick up our flight route once we program that in. Just going to get rid of that for a second. Let's now program in our route. So down here, I'm going to go to flight plan and say KSAN, which is the code for San Diego, to KSMO, which is the code for Santa Monica, like that. And what we are going to do is the Coward 2 departure, SLI transition. I'll load that up. So you can now see on the map that route has now appeared. Going back to procedures, we are going to be flying, well actually, I was going to say we're going to fly the RNAV into 2-1, but as the winds have changed in San Diego, it would make sense to have a quick check of what the winds are doing up in Santa Monica. So let's go back to flight radar, work our way up the coast. Looks like they're still flying the usual way. So looking at LAX, they're flying out over the ocean, and the winds are variable at 6 knots at Santa Monica, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that we are going to be landing on runway 21. So let's just go straight back into the sim and we'll select that. So we're going to be flying an approach called the RNAV 21, and if you look at the map, I'm just going to hit load, and you can see the white line has now put in our approach. So that all looks good. Another couple of things I'm just going to do on here is enable VNAV, which we'll be using a little bit later on. And over on this one, I'm going to turn on the charts. Let me just split the screen like that. I really love using these charts. This is such a great addition. So I'm using the TBM improvement mod, which is freely available on the internet, and it's just so good. It looks really, really good, and you can bring the screens, bring the charts up on your display screen just there, rather than having to constantly click away to your desktop. So that all looks good. So just actually to explain on this chart, look, you can see again the airport here. Here is San Diego. We are going to be taxiing up to runway 9 for takeoff. So presumably we will need to cross over maybe at Charlie 6 and then head up Bravo and hold at runway 9. We will see if the controller is still on at the time we ask for our clearance. So all that is looking good. Just sort of doing a quick check around here, see if there's anything else that we need to be doing. I don't think so. So what we're going to do now is get things running with the engine. So I'm going to turn on the auxiliary boost pump and turn on the starter. This is liquid flight radar, says one of our viewers. Now this is my friend Chris, who's kindly tuned in, and is clearly an Alan Partridge fan, as he's given away there with his comment. Thank you for tuning in there, Chris. I appreciate that. I hope it doesn't send you to sleep. Right, let's put some fuel into the engines. Get that warmed up. And I'm just looking here. Once that hits the green on the NG, I can now bring over the throttle lever, and the engine's warming up nicely. Good. Now that's done, I can turn on the bleeds. The pitot heats are already on. I'll give the inert step a quick go. Flick over the auxiliary boost pump to automatic, fuel selector to automatic, and turn on the APs as well. Okay, so that all looks good. And what we're now going to do is call up air traffic control in San Diego, who have promptly gone offline. So no need to do that. That actually makes it a little bit easier though, because we'll be able to just taxi out and find our own way. Instead, I will announce my intentions on Unicom. So 122.8 for Unicom, and otherwise we're all set to go. So take off the parking brake. I'm just going to set the flaps and just check my headset is all okay. Yep. Check the rudders right and left, and the main yoke. Right. Okay. So here we go. Let's move off from our stand. Left propeller like a traction engine. Excellent. So what we're going to do is follow taxiway Charlie and cross over, and then continue our taxi up the other side. So I've always been quite hesitant about putting my face on YouTube, but I decided to take a leap and just do it. We now have a webcam. I thought I'd just do this, but I have to say, I'm never normally nervous about making my YouTube videos. I made a fair few of them now, and I've made almost as many videos as I have viewers, but it is quite strange suddenly knowing that you're on webcam. Right, the TBM is obviously quite a small plane, so we don't need the full runway length, so I'm thinking of just cutting the journey time a bit here by taking off from this point. So what we're just going to quickly do is take a look again over at our SimAware screen to see if anyone is on their way over. Right, it looks like JPR 131 is about to begin his takeoff roll. Can't see him anywhere. Let's just transition back quickly to the cockpit. Oh, there he is. Look, you can just see a red light flashing up there. So I think JPR 131 has taken off now, and I'm going to pull onto the runway and do a quick takeoff. So I'm just going to announce that on Unicom. San Diego traffic, Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha TBM 930, lining up 09 for departure. I'm going to get the strobes and the landing lights on now. And I'm just going to give this full power because I'm not using the full runway length. So here we go. Slightly over torqued the engine, so just pull that back slightly. There we are. Looking for rotate speed of 90 knots, so there's 80, 85, 90, and pull back, and away we go. The joys of flying a small plane. So up we go, and I'll pull the gear up. Cashback on takeoff. Very good, thanks Chris. San Diego traffic, Golf Tango Echo Whiskey Alpha is clear of runway 09, airborne 750 feet. San Diego traffic. So bring in the flaps, we're over 115 knots, and once we hit 140 knots, I'm going to flip it into what they call flight level change mode, which will mean I will be at a nice steady climb, which will maintain 140 knots. So I've just done that now. And I'm just now going to change our heading. So we're going to head to the north. And this is Greater San Diego here. It really is a pretty murky day. I am flying on real world weather, so I assume this is realistic. And what we also ought to just do here is check our weather radar. Oh, right, okay. On the left-hand side here of the screen, you can see some bright colours, and basically I want to avoid that red because that is where it could be a thunderstorm or something. So I'm just going to keep over to the right-hand side a little bit here. Just continuing to fly this manually for the moment. As there's no air traffic control on, I'm planning on just going direct up to the SLI VOR. Now I'm just going to engage the autopilot. So that's going to take some of the workload off. We're climbing up to 16,000. Take a quick look outside. So there we go. You can see the city disappearing behind us, and some pretty imposing looking clouds up front. So the headset I'm using, John, is called a Track IR headset. So if you look at my baseball cap, there is something here on the baseball cap which reflects back to an infrared camera which is on top of the screen, so that when I look around it looks around with me. And it is a fantastic addition for flight simming. Anything that makes you feel slightly more like you're doing it for real is a good thing in my book. I have collected all this stuff up over many years, so I think I got my headset about 8-9 years ago. My most recent addition is my new flight yoke controls, which I just have here, which is the Honeycomb Bravo throttle quadrant and the Alpha flight yoke, and it's really good. I've waited a long time to get one of these because they're like gold dust, but really pleased with it. Now, what I'm just doing here, coming back to my flying, is just avoiding all this bright colour on the left-hand side of the screen. So this is the weather radar. Again, this is real-world weather. What we can actually do is just go back to our flight radar here and take a quick look and see what it is like in San Diego. So, yeah, it is overcast in San Diego, and it's 18 degrees. But yeah, so what I'm looking at here, just in this white box, this is called METAR, which is some weather information, and this is giving us a readout of the weather at San Diego. So lots of cloud. You can see few clouds, 2,400, broken 4,700, broken 9,000. And yeah, the general condition is overcast. So it is certainly realistic weather, and it's taking us a while to get over the top of these clouds. One thing to just do when you're flying through clouds, just take a quick look and make sure your wings aren't icing up. And on Flight Sim 2020, you can see the icing happen. Even in warm weather, if you fly through stormy clouds, you can get some icing. I don't here, thankfully, but always worth a check. Now, I've gone through 10,000 feet, which means I can now turn off the landing lights, so I'm just going to flick those off up there. So we know we're flying through very accurate weather. Sadly, it means we're not seeing all that much right now. But we're also deviating a little bit from the planned flight route. So because there's no air traffic controllers on, I'm going to largely abandon the planned flight route, and I'm just going to go straight to the SLI VOR. So the Seal Beach VOR, which is just to the south of Los Angeles. So what I just need to do here is bring up my flight plan again, and instead of all this, I'm just going to say SLI direct to activate, and then click nav, and the plane is now going to pick up that route. Now it's not very far, it's 75 miles, which in flying terms is nothing. It is a bit like going from, you know, Covent Garden to Leicester Square on the Piccadilly line. Oh, got a bit of icing here, so I'm just going to turn on the de-icers. Let's just put those on. You see the ice disappears. Nice touch. And we are now coming above the clouds, which is good. And timely as well, because looking ahead again at the weather radar, you can see how much red is in front of us. The weather radar works on a very straightforward system of red, don't go there, amber, be careful, green, you're okay. So if you see lots of red, don't fly through it. And that would be the same if you're in a big aircraft as well, like a 747 or something. So stormy weather in San Diego. Just zooming in over on the right hand side of our display, you can now see we have a new pink line. That is our direct to route, which is going to take us up to Seal Beach. And I know when I'm on that line, because over in the centre here, this pink line here, when that central pink line is in the middle of the arrow, you're on course. Now I've got the auto. I'm making the autopilot do this for me at the moment, but it keeps it nice and straightforward. But that is how you do it. So here we are, nearly at 16,000 feet. We'll now put our foot down and pick our speed up to cruise altitude. Start to see now that we're levelling off and we're not putting as much energy into climb, you can now see the speed is picking up on the left hand side of the primary flight display. Now what we're going to do now is start planning for our approach, because it's not going to be very long. So what I'm going to do to start with is go back into our flight plan down here and scroll down. Now these are the various different waypoints, junctions basically in the sky where we're going to be flying through. VNAV is enabled. Now this is quite clever, this is how this works. So let's transition over to Navigraph now. So these are our flight charts, and I'm going to bring up the charts at the top here for KSMO, which is the code for Santa Monica. And we're going to be flying an approach called the RNAV for runway 21. So it all looks fairly straightforward, but this chart tells you a lot. Now this is quite a straightforward approach, but if you are flying into somewhere like Innsbruck in Austria, which is surrounded by mountains, the charts can be so dense as to be almost bemusing with detail. But this is quite straightforward, and it tells us a few things. So what this tells us is that the airport elevation is 170 feet, just up in this, on the right hand side here. So the airport elevation is 170 feet above sea level, and it's telling us that our altitudes, if we scroll to the bottom here, will be as follows. So we're going to get to a waypoint called Darts, where we're going to need to be at 4,200 feet. Then we get to Move, where we need to be at 3,000 feet. Then get to Mipti, where we need to be at 1,440 feet. And then we need to be visual with the runway and finish off the rest of the approach using sight. It also says down here that our decision altitude is 440 feet. Let's just transition now back into the sim. Now, when you look at our map here, you can see some of that detail. So here we are coming up the California coast, and you can see where Darts is, and then after Darts you've got the waypoints Move and MIPT and so on. So that has created a sort of highway for us that we're going to fly through in the sky. Now if you combine that down here with the flight management computer, if you remember at Darts we need to be at 4,200 feet, so I'm going to hit enter. At Move we need to be at 3,000 feet, and at MIPT we need to be at 1,440 feet. And the airport elevation was 170 feet. Now what that's basically going to do is draw a line for us which tells us when we're going to need to start descending. Now it's not done that because I've actually played around with a direct 2 on our flight plan. So I'm just going to quickly do here, switch over to heading hold, delete the flight plan, and then reinsert the flight plan by saying San Diego, okay Sam, to Santa Monica, okay SMO. We're just going to go direct to SLI, and then we are going to fly the RNAV, oh no, not that one, RNAV into 2-1, and that's then put it back on the screen. And we will now put those altitudes back in there. So 4,200 at Darts, 3,000 at Move, 1440 at MIPT, and 170 on the airport elevation. Now, what's quite clever about that is it will give me a time to top of descent. So just looking at this screen here, it says time to TOD, which is 9 minutes and 40 seconds before we're going to start descending. So in piloting terms, this is actually quite a busy flight because there's an awful lot to do in a very short space of time. But we now know where we need to be in terms of altitude and also kind of laterally. We're not just going to guess and fly some kind of dead reckoning heading and hope we make it there okay. We can just follow our instrument guidance all the way in, because this map links in with the instruments that we're looking at here, so we can follow it all the way down. It's quite hard flying this and explaining it at the same time, but I hope that is vaguely helpful. And this is of course a very accurate simulation of how it works in real life. I do a lot of airline flying as well with bigger jets, which are more complicated, and you can fly further and faster and all the rest of it, and they're great fun as well. I think the bigger the better, but I do also really enjoy flying this plane. If I had $4 million, this is the kind of plane I would probably buy. It's nice and quick, nice and small, you can fit your family in it, and it's pretty fuel efficient as well. Take a look at this. So it's got such a powerful turboprop, it's almost as fast as a jet. And there it goes. So we'll now catch up and jump back in. This is the accommodation at the rear of the cabin. Very nice. But it's obviously the left-hand seat where I always like to be. So let's just double check where we are. 7 minutes now to top of descent. This is going to be interesting because you've got still plenty of colour on the weather radar, which makes this it might make for an interesting ride. So turbulence is fully simulated on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, of course. So if it's going to be a bumpy ride in, we will know all about it. hopeful, if I just zoom out on the weather radar, I'm hopeful that it might be getting a bit clearer towards Los Angeles. Maybe. Just give it a chance to do a sweep. Yeah, so John says, anything in your years to work and save up for my $4 million to buy a TBM 930. Yeah. If I can outsource looking after the children to you, John, then maybe I might get there. You never know. But yeah, this is a fantastic plane. And the other reason I think I would have a plane like this rather than like a Learjet or something bigger is you can pretty much fly it anywhere in the world. Because it's so small and so powerful, you can land it on the tiniest of runways. So you don't need all the complexity of a jet engine, you know, or a runway big enough to take a jet engine. You can take this off on a tiny grass strip, I expect. But I have flown this all the way around the world. So before doing a live stream today, I was doing conventional videos of this world tour. I started in Cambridge. I flew up to Stornoway in Scotland and refueled. Then I flew to Iceland, over to Greenland, over to Canada, Quebec and Toronto, and then over to New York, down the East Coast, across the Caribbean. I went all the way around South America, and then back up to San Diego. Now, all of those episodes are on the channel. So if you are having difficulty sleeping, can I suggest that you check out back episodes of the series? Because I am reliably informed by one of my colleagues that they are very cathartic. I know cathartic, not soporific, but I think I know what he meant. Right, let's take a quick look. 4 minutes now to top a descent, and I'm just going to turn us very slightly over towards that pink line, just so we're definitely coming in on the right approach route. I don't know when the next version of MS Flight Sim is due for release. I mean, candidly, I don't know what more they can do to make this any better. Maybe that just sounds naive. I mean, thinking about it, when I first started flight simming when I was about 11 or 12 years old on an Amiga Atari, so you know, I'm showing my age now, but it was the classic thing where it was just green for land and blue for sky. In fact, what it looks like on the primary flight display here is probably better in terms of graphics than some of the early flight simulators I first had a go on my computer. So, and even then I thought that was great. On the very first flight simulators, they weren't open world in the sense they are now either. You know, you got to a point where you kind of bounced off something invisible. Now, of course, it's the most open world game imaginable. You can fly over your own house. You can fly anywhere in the world. So I don't know what more they can do then to improve on this, because it's so stunningly realistic. I'm hoping that once we break through the cloud in Los Angeles, we will see some of the scenery of that vast metropolis. But everything is on here. I live in a rural village in Cambridgeshire, and I can see my own house on Flight Sim 2020. So I suppose it's just, you know, as graphics cards get better, they'll just get better resolutions, and it will look even sharper than it looks now. But this is pretty sensational. I would say that Flight Sim 2020 is the point at which you can genuinely fly on a sim, and it will be pretty much as good as doing it in real life. And certainly when you then compare the cost of flying in real life, this for me is a good compromise. I can't afford to have flying lessons, unfortunately. With my 2 children, the 2 dogs, and the cat, of course, you know, it's just the lifestyle you choose, I guess. So flying lessons are out of the question. It's about £200 for an hour in the sky. But this is a good compromise. And before anyone asks in the live chat, do I love my kids? Of course I love my kids. It's just a case that I can't afford to have flying lessons. And that, there's a regret there. There's a regret that I didn't do it when I was young enough and had the money to do it. So, 1 minute 57 now to descent, just on that centre bit. And you can see that we've managed quite neatly to avoid the worst of that weather. If you look again on the weather radar, you can see the red, amber and green. We're on the sort of left-hand edge of the amber bit, so I think we're going to be all right. But for those of you who like to take this, you know, really seriously, do please fasten your seatbelts ahead of descent, because it might be a little bit bumpy. Now I'm just going to, at this point, select 4,200 in the autopilot to take us down to darts. So just looking here on the primary flight display, you can see that blue number now says 4,200. I have selected that using my honeycomb Bravo throttle quadrant, so I can actually fiddle with that here. I've selected 4,200, but I've not yet told the plane to descend to 4,200. I did not just try and give my children away for $4 million on the internet. That is just disingenuous. I find that quite offensive, as if I would do that. In fact, I'd happily babysit anyone else's kids for $4 million if that meant I could get one of these planes. I would take on additional children for that. So, but I am enjoying the comments. Thank you very much. We are now just a few seconds away, 20 seconds away from descent. What you can now see on the right-hand side, next to where it says 16,000, is you can see a pink arrow starting to drop. That is giving us our descent profile, and this pink arrow here is telling us how steeply we need to descend in order to meet that profile, which is going to be around about 1,750 feet. I'm going to hit the flight level change button, which means that the plane is going to go into a descent holding the speed of 210 knots. So we're basically putting Sir Isaac Newton in the driving seat. As I pull back on the speed, on the throttle, we see the nose drop and gravity is starting to pull us down. And now I can just gently adjust the throttle to keep roughly that pink arrow on the left hand side next to where it says 14, 13, etc. I want that to be on that centre white line. Then I'm bang on target, and I will hit 4,200 feet by darts, which is, as you can see, where we need to be according to the chart. There's darts, 4,200, and that is what we are now executing here. So, first bit of cloud. Check for any icing over here on the wing. When I was doing the TBM 930 World Tour up through Iceland and Greenland, the icing was seriously thick. You could see it on the windows and everything. But obviously this is California, so it's fine. So just weaving around a bit as we sort of pick up our RNAV approach. We're a little bit further back from the RNAV approach at the moment, but we're just on our way into darts. If you just, if I just zoom in here, you can now see on this map, you can see darts, move, MIPT, and then KSMO is Santa Monica at the end there. So some other airports, you can see Lax there, that's Los Angeles International. We are right now just over Long Beach, which is KLGB. Sadly, can't really see it, but that's flying for you. Where's the beautiful California clear skies when you need them? What is the issue with icing on the wings? That's a great question, John. Icing can basically screw up the whole plane because it can be so thick. When you go through really dense clouds, if you were to fly through a thunderstorm, you would likely get some severe icing, and it would just freeze up the plane. You know, you can freeze up. There are important things called pitot sensors, I think they're called, on the outside of the plane, which help your altimeters to function, and it helps you tell what speed you're doing, all this kind of thing. They all just freeze up, so you end up in a place where your instruments aren't giving you accurate readings, and that can obviously be very hard to fly through. And of course it can affect hydraulics and mean that your controls freeze up and everything, so you've got to be quite careful of icing. Now this is the first sim, I think, where they have really accurately modelled icing, and it's just something else you really have to think about when you come through clouds. Just looking again, all I'm looking at here is this pink arrow next to the 10,000 there, just to try and keep that as much as possible on the centre line. If I'm above it, I reduce the speed a bit and I drop down. As I then meet it, I just put a little bit more power on the throttle. So I shouldn't see any ice collect at the moment, so I've got the de-icers on, but if I turn those off, we might see some more ice on the wings in a little while. So we're going through 10,000 feet. I'm now going to turn on the landing lights. Oof, into the gloom. So this is, you know, this is Los Angeles. Welcome to Los Angeles, scenic. I think this is genuine cloud though, at least it's not smog. Although you never do know with Southern California. I enjoy flying this plane as well because it is so straightforward. You know, it's great flying a, I don't know, Boeing 747-400 or something, thousands of miles transatlantic, but that is quite complicated. There's a lot involved there. This is nice and straightforward, this one. Let's take a quick look over at SimAware and see what the traffic is looking like in Los Angeles. So this is quite cool. This is us. You can see our route. Actually, no, that's not me. That's the other plane. Here we are. That's us. So we did that route to avoid the weather. And we're now right up here. And we are going to Santa Monica, which is SMO. So just over to our left-hand side here, somewhere through the murk, is Los Angeles International, which sadly we're obviously going to miss. And then we'll turn left into Santa Monica. Now, right now, there's not much else around, so that's okay. I'm just checking here to see if there's anyone else going into Santa Monica. There isn't, so that's good. I will announce my intentions, but we don't need to be too concerned about other traffic. Of course, normally, or sometimes, if you're lucky, you get you get to have air traffic controllers online who will direct you. That you get them a lot coming into London Heathrow, which is why I very often fly British Airways into Heathrow. Again, there are some videos on the channel if you want to watch that, but another time I'll do a live stream of some airliner flying, which is really good fun. Really, really gloomy now. So we're coming up on darts. We're at 5,400 feet. I want to just drop down to 4,200 just before we get to darts, because then I can level off and slow the plane down, because I really want to slow it down a bit before we do the turn left towards Santa Monica. So I'll just again zoom this in. Now that I think we're through the worst of the weather, what I'm going to do instead on my left-hand map is put in a traffic map. So this will just show me any aircraft that are nearby. I should be reasonably well separated. You can see a couple just there, look. That minus 22 and plus 7, plus 8. That's that's showing where the aircraft are relative to you. So if it's at minus 18 or something, that means it is 1,800 feet below you. So we need to continue our descent here before I get too distracted. Down to 3,000 feet, which we need to be at by move. I've now slowed the plane up to 180 knots. And this is real instrument flying for you, because you can't see a thing. In fact, I'm just going to turn on my cockpit lights here, just so I can see things a little bit more clearly. So this is why I need the RNAV guidance. So I know that I'm going from one waypoint to another. I'm flying from darts to move, then move to MIPT, then MIPT into Santa Monica. And I know which altitudes I need to be at each point. I need to be at 3,000 by move. I'm currently 5.5 miles from move. This is really fun, this, because I've also now got an 11 knot crosswind, so I can see that here. There's a little bit here which has an arrow and 10, so the wind is coming at me from around about 10 o'clock over this direction at 10 knots. So not an insignificant wind there. I'm now going to select 1,440 on the autopilot. No, there we go. Let's go down a bit. And we're now descending down to 1,440 in time for MIPT. Two ways I can just double check I'm descending at the right rate. First of all, where it says -1,000, that's approaching a pink arrow, which is giving me an indicator of how steeply I need to descend. If I slow up, you can see the nose goes down a bit, so that shows how steeply I need to descend. And over here, you can see that blue sort of circular line which is hovering around MIPT. That is showing me when I will reach 1,440 feet. So combining these instruments with our trusty Navigraph chart over here with these altitudes means I can safely guide myself into the runway, despite the fact I can't see anything. Miserable weather. Oh, look! Look at this. The paradise of California. Look at that. Okay. What I'm also just going to do here is oh no, there is no ILS at Santa Monica. Okay. Sorry, ILS is let's turn off the autopilot. I'm going to hand fly this now. Turn off the yaw damper, turn off the flight directors. I can just see the runway in front of me.
Landing gear. Landing gear.
I'm coming in slightly steep, but thankfully at the point I reach MIPT, I could see the runway, which is what I needed to be able to do in order to land safely. So this is beautiful Santa Monica. Right, so let's get the gear out. And we'll start really slowing the plane up at this point. So the approach speed for a TBM 930 is about 85 knots, so I'm just slowing right up now. And funnily enough, I'm aiming for where the white squares are. I'm just going to hold the nose up a little bit until, hopefully, there we go. So not a long flight, that one. And we're just going to pull up over here, I think. That looks good enough for me. Turn off the landing lights And the strobes turn on. You can see them, the taxi lights. There we go. I think this might have been the airport where Harrison Ford landed on the taxiway, so we really ought to be careful coming down here. So, the question as to who do you interact with air traffic controller wise, the answer is through VATSIM. So I might try and show you. Let's find somewhere to park. We can have a listen in. So I am on VATSIM. So I can bring up a window with some radio frequencies. Let's listen into Los Angeles Center, which is on 135,550, and see what they're saying. 135,550.
Field is at your 2 o'clock and 8 miles. Report field in sight.
Okay, descending for 300, 030, 151.
Insurance 131, airport is at your 2 o'clock, 8 miles. Report in sight.
I copied.
So these are other simmers who are flying on VATSIM. Now, if you have a controller controlling your airport, then it's your lucky day, and they will talk you down and help you out, which makes it really fun.
66 Niner Echo Romeo. Wind is 18015, gust 25, runway 27, clear to land.
So that's what VATSIM sounds like, which is really great. And just turn that off.
Delta 1162, Lima Airspace East, radar service terminated, frequency change approved, Albuquerque Center's offline.
But just so I'm not talking over them the whole time, so that's an answer to the question about air traffic controllers who you interact with. They're total strangers. You've got geeks in the world who like to fly, like me, and then you've got other people who like, other geeks, I guess, who like to control air traffic, and they can help you out on VATSIM, and they're really, really good. It's unbelievably professional. As I say, coming into London in particular, I find it a very, very challenging environment. Really, really fun. Couldn't recommend it more highly. It's really hard, but that's what makes it fun. But it's honestly like talking a different language, air traffic control. Sometimes it's just learning all the different procedures and how you say stuff and what they're telling you, and having to read it all back is quite fun. Not that you want to, but is it possible to crash into other aircraft in the sky? It depends. I normally disable the ability to crash into other objects, not because of crashing to other planes in the sky, but more because I don't want to have, I don't know if there are any in this airport, but you can have it, like, well, there's one over there actually, where there's like an airport bus, and otherwise if you're not careful you can crash into them, and because it's just AI, it's not particularly clever AI, they just drive all over the place, and you can do a perfect flight and then crash into a fire truck on the taxiway, which gets quite annoying. So you can, but I normally disable that. And sadly, no haptic feedback through the yoke as such, so I don't feel kind of the clouds as I'm going through it. But on this controller, this is quite stiff, which is like a real flight, like a real aircraft yoke. When you're flying in a real plane, it's surprisingly tiring when you pull back on takeoff, which is why you have something called trimming. To take the pressure off the stick, you trim it so that you can let the stick go and it will continue climbing for you. Let's turn off the engine. There we go. And turn off the bleeds. We'll turn off the APs and the fuel selectors and the auxiliary boost pump, the ignition. It has a massively overzealous alarm on the TBM, which is really annoying. And with everything off, I'm now going to turn off the power, like that, and open up the door. You can also open up the door at the back here, which is rather fun. So here we are, safely arrived in Santa Monica, the short hop up from San Diego. So the TBM 930 tour will continue from here. I think from here what I'm going to do is fly up the west coast. I'm just going to follow the coast at low altitude and go up to sort of San Francisco area. So up past Santa Barbara and Big Sur and Monterey and what have you. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I mean, this is a lot easier for me. This is a lot quicker than me pulling together big flights and editing them all down and everything. This is quick and easy to do, and hopefully it makes it a bit more interactive, a bit more fun. And if you've enjoyed it, please look out for future live streams on the channel, because I will do another one in another few days maybe and fly up towards Palo Alto. There's an airport up near Palo Alto that I plan to fly to. But before we shut down, what we'll just do is, despite the slightly dodgy weather, let's see what we can see of Los Angeles. So the other fantastic thing about Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, if you're not familiar with it, is the drone. So this is now in drone mode, and we can head out to the coast. It's a little bit brighter. Here is Santa Monica Beach. Let's just turn around. There we are. Very nice. In fact, I've walked down there on that pathway along that beach. I think that's down near Muscle Beach. Is this the pier? Where the yep. Oh, okay. So they haven't quite got the pier right, but there's the pier in Santa Monica with the fairground rides. And over here, oh, where the water is, I think that is Marina del Rey. Chris, if you're still watching, you've been to Los Angeles recently, you can tell me. I think that's Marina del Rey, and I'm pretty sure that it's Marina del Rey where all the Baywatch cast lived. So, you know, down here, presumably. In fact, that is a Baywatch beach hut right there. I mean, that's a bit basic, but it works when you're looking at it from altitude. There's LAX Airport just over here. So here is LAX. Oh, ooh, a bit murky over. Oh gosh, it's horrible over here. That might well be the pollution. Here's the airport. There's the TBT, the International Terminal. And yeah. Ooh, right. Let's go. Oh, whoa. We need some better weather than this. Right. Oof. That, I reckon, could be smog. There's Marina del Rey. So where were we? Heading over this way somewhere, I guess. And it's just such a huge urban sprawl. When I last flew into Los Angeles, it was 2011, and I flew in a Virgin Atlantic Airbus A340-600, which is quite a rarity to see nowadays. Just big jet, 4 engines, huge long hauler, 10.5 hours, 11 hours from London. And I remember, even though we were flying, 250, 300 miles an hour over Greater Los Angeles, it still seemed to take us ages to fly over the city. It is just so huge. Now I think this is downtown LA. What have we got over here? Toyota advertisements, Coca-Cola advertisements. I think this is downtown LA. And I think if we follow this interstate up here, we end up in Pasadena, because that's where I was staying last time I was in Los Angeles. But where from here is Hollywood? I think it's over this way. The one thing you also need, as well as a good graphics card for Flight Sim 2020, is a good internet connection, because this is basically streaming from the internet. I'm going to have to level with you and tell you that I've got completely lost now. I don't know whereabouts we are relative to Hollywood and everything else. It looks like we're getting quite close to the Californian foothills. So let's zoom right back to where the aeroplane is, and I will call it a day. So thank you very much for watching. It's been really fun doing this. I will do another live stream again soon. And if you haven't subscribed already, please hit the subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate that. And I will speak to you again soon. Look out for some short and long haul flying here on the channel. Bye for now.